Hey everyone, welcome back to another Tic Tac Taiko. If you play Taiko with any sort of stance, you're using your knees. This week's video is focusing all on knees, looking at what you can do with them, what you shouldn't do with them, and then we'll end with some stretches and exercises. So let's go. This week's video is inspired by a viewer who emailed me and asked, among other things, for some advice on how to strengthen the knees. I thought I could expand on it and would make a nice video, and here we are. The knees do a lot of things. I'm not going to get into every single one, but I do want to mention 3 that are especially good for Taiko players. As I mentioned in my power primer video, I think 2 weeks ago, the legs can generate a tremendous amount of force, especially laterally. And the knees play a large role in that. The knees coil and spring a potentially huge amount of energy, more than probably any other part of the legs. The knees also can, and I would say should, act as shock absorbers. When I use gravity and let the strike go down into the drum, I should also let that force go through my body into the ground, into the floor. And the knees are going to be the part that moves the most to allow that to happen. And finally, stability. Every time you play and strike, especially with larger motions, your whole body is going to move. Every time you rotate the torso, every time you step and move around with the feet, your knees are keeping you from essentially falling over, but also allowing you a stable place to generate power, to generate force and momentum. I've mentioned this before, that between karate and taiko, I have about 50 years of combined training. And in that time, I've had injuries, I've had wounds, I've had aches and pains, I've hit myself, I've been hit, I've tweaked my back, I've rolled my ankle, I've slept funny on my neck. Stuff happens. But the one thing that's never failed me, that's never caused me trouble, are my knees. My knees. San Jose Taiko style taught me to focus on lower body activation. Every hit, every strike, every movement involved the lower body. And involving the lower body means the knees are involved, pushing off and stabilizing and making sure I can do what I want. But what's more, they also focus a lot on being flexible enough to have good ergonomics. Because without good ergonomics, lower stance is just asking for trouble over time. Shotokan karate is known for having deep, long stances, big exaggerated motions, and then generating explosive power from that low base. It also has something that all karate has, which is kicking. Having the ability to bring your knee up, kick a target, the knee is going to be involved, but not just the knee kicking, the supporting knee as well. This is actually doing most of the work. It's keeping me stable, it's supporting my weight, it's generating power, and it provides stability when I step down. That's a lot going on with every single kick. So when I combine both of those arts that focus on lower body mechanics with apparently pretty good knee genetics, I find myself really fortunate. Before I continue, I want to make a very important disclaimer. What follows next for the rest of the video are my ideas, my stretches, and my exercises. These work for me, they make sense to me based on my experiences, and I'm hoping they make sense to you. If you try some, or all, and you find some of them uncomfortable, modify it to make it work for you. But if you feel pain on anything, just stop. Just stop at your body giving you a huge red flag, and you need to listen to your body. Raise your hand if you've ever been told that the knee should never go past the toes. I've been told that many, many times in Taiko and many, many times in karate. And the thing is, it's more nuanced than that. It's not as black and white as people might have you believe. Here's an experiment I want you to try. The next time you get up out of a chair, I want you to pay attention to where your knees are in relation to where your toes are. I'm going to get up out of the chair how I normally would, and try not to think about it too much. Oh look, my knee's over my toes, but that's wrong. I shouldn't be doing that, right? Let's try that again. Oh, did it again. I must be doing it wrong. Another thing you can try to do is try to get up without your knee going over your toes. I practice this. It feels weird. I'm not going to do it now. I want you to try it. Try it normally, then try it without letting the knee go over the toe. It's very weird. Another example, when I kneel down to tie my shoe, this knee is well over this toe. That's a pretty big gap. Granted, the knee's on the floor, so some of the weight is off. But this morning, I caught myself with my knee up, not thinking about it. Again, it's different because I'm sitting my weight on my heel. It's a lot different than holding the weight on top of the knee. But it's just to show you that that blanket statement, don't let your knee go over your toe, doesn't always apply. Having said that, there's something about having the knees over the toes that can be potentially dangerous. It doesn't so much happen if you have a low stance. If I have a very nice rooted stance, it's hard to get my knees over my toes without it feeling really, really awkward. It's more likely to happen in a narrower stance, when I can do this without feeling too much stress or pressure. And in this position, it's okay. It's like a stretch or an exercise. I'm stressing the muscle, which builds the muscle, just like weightlifting does. When the knee is over the toes and you start to play Taiko, up and down, forward and back, side to side, you're taking a knee that's already under a lot of stress and you're adding more stress to it. You're starting to add friction and wear and tear. This is where the potential for danger skyrockets. How does this translate to Taiko? Good question. Let's say I'm playing nanane. The drum's over here. This is my back leg. We'll focus on this. The toes right now are pointed straight out, kind of towards you. I want my knee, when it bends, to go that way. Doesn't mean I want my weight to go back, however. It just means I need to open the thigh up as I go down. And if I'm torquing forward, that's okay. Why is it okay? Because look at my knee, it's not bent. That's the key. I can still go in a direction that's different from where my toes are pointed, but I don't want to bend the knee in a different direction. If you don't believe me or you think, oh, I don't quite get it, try this, okay? You get your foot pointed, say 90 degrees from the drum, turn your torso like you would be striking, and then bend the knee. Ugh, that does not feel good. And it happens all the time. I see so many taiko players doing versions of this, whether their foot is out or flat or in, and the knee is bending in weird places. You are causing damage, and damage that will build up over time. Okay, let's get into some stretching. When you stretch for the knee, your main focus is on 4 parts. You've got your quadriceps, you've got your hamstrings, you've got your hip flexors, and you've got your calf muscles. All of these parts are supporting the knee, and there's muscles around the knee as well, ligaments, tendons, etc. But don't neglect the big muscles that are going to support what your knee is trying to do. You could easily look on Google for knee stretches. I'm not going to go through a huge list. I'm just going to give you 3 stretches that I do that work for me. First up is a double stretch exercise. I call it hugging your knee. You're going to bring your knee up, reach down and grab it, correct your posture so that you're not hunched forward, and bring the heel up to your core by way of closing and squishing your knee together. Now, you can hold on to something if you need it, which I don't have, but the point is also to exercise the supporting leg. Like I mentioned earlier with kicking, the supporting leg is doing a lot of work. It's keeping you balanced, it's working to keep you balanced, so you're getting a stretch with one leg and a workout on the other. Another version of the stretch is to bring the heel up to the glute or the buttock, grab it, squeeze it in a bit. Again, you're compressing a knee, but you're also stretching the ankle out a little bit, and you can play with that to see how it feels. You can use one hand, you can use both hands. Again, if you need support, you can grab onto something. And just like the other version, your supporting leg is doing a lot of work as well. The next stretch is definitely not orthodox. Lift your foot off the ground. Doesn't have to be up high, just off the ground. And then think about wiggling your foot side to side. Doing this is torquing the knee in this kind of rotation, which it doesn't get a lot of in day-to-day life. It doesn't get a lot of that in Taiko either. You can do it lightly, you can do it a little more vigorously. It's not meant to be fast or hard. It's just meant to also work your balance, as you can see, right? And before I fall, I'm going to put my foot down. Try that on both sides, see what it feels like. The last stretch I'm going to talk about, I call the 3 stretch stance. You start by standing about shoulder width apart, and I'll turn to the side to make the rest of this easier to see. From here, you're stepping out about double shoulder width, and you can adjust however you want. There's no need to be exact. But what's important for here, heels are down and both toes are pointed forward. From here, I'm going to bend, pulse back and forth a little bit, just keep things loose. Sometimes I'll keep the back leg straight, not locked, but straight. Sometimes I'll let the knee bend so that I'm keeping this plane. And here you go, knee over toes. Be careful, but you're getting a stretch. You're pushing forward. And I can sometimes turn the pelvis a little bit. I'm still trying to keep my upper body forward, but turning the pelvis can help stretch those hip flexors that I mentioned earlier. Part 2 has me turning my upper body outside, to the side. I'm twisting, but if I twist and I don't pay attention to the front knee, it's going to want to follow me. It's going to want to collapse in. I definitely don't want that. So while I turn, I'm pressing the inner thigh outwards, which creates a torque, not a twerk, that's a totally different drill. A torque on the knee that's part of this stretch. It's also creating tension and torque in the rear leg as well as all the way down to the ankle, and that's what I want. I want a stretch going down and coming out on both legs. If it helps, you can also use your arms to accentuate the stretch, but this is not about going fast or hard. It's a gentle stretch, and you just kind of feel where your limits are. For part 3, you're going to release the tension that's on the back foot. If you just lift the toes up a little bit, it'll open up, and it doesn't matter what angle the toes are at, as long as the tension is off the ankle. And now you're going to rotate the upper body back, facing the front like it was in the first part. But now your back leg doesn't want to go like it used to, and that's fine. That's where the stretch is. So you're turning in. Make sure you're not bending the knee though, because that's going to create all kinds of collapsing you don't want. So the leg is straight as you turn forward, but you're creating a torque and a stretch down the inside of your leg, focused around the knee. And then from here, I find also sometimes shifting my weight, turning and finding different angles creates different types of stretch. But again, being really careful. I'm not trying to force my weight. This is all a very gentle stretch. Let's get to the exercises. The first 2 exercises are the power horses of knee strengthening. You've got your lunges and you've got your squats. I'm not going to go too much into detail about either one, but I do want to talk about them a little bit. For squats, I like to have my toes pointed forward in the same direction. It might be okay to let them angle out a bit. I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. But whatever angle your toes are, that's the direction you want your knees to bend in. That's really important. Also, you want to keep your back straight. You are leaning forward to compensate for the balance, but you don't want to hunch forward. You want to make sure your back is nice and straight. I'm going to talk about 2 different squats that are really the same squat with one variation. The first one is what I call the neutral squat. I almost feel like I've dropped something between my toes and I want to lean down and pick it up, but doing it in a squat. So as my weight comes down, it's going down center, almost like I'm able to pick something up here. This is the neutral squat. The rear squat, I think about it as my weight's going back, like I know there's something I want to sit on, but I don't know exactly how high up it is. Whichever squat you decide to do, you're working the same muscle groups. There's just a different emphasis on which muscles at which time. And just because I'm saying there's this one and there's this one, doesn't mean that there's not all the versions in between. This is especially good if you're trying to avoid something that's sore or you're dealing with flexibility. As far as lunges go, again, I'm not going to get too much into the details, but I find that there's 3 really interesting variations to try. So you have your neutral lunge, where the weight stays primarily on one leg the entire time. Your other leg will step back and does touch the floor, but it's not really alleviating the body weight. And then you have the rear lunge, which is very similar to the neutral lunge. except you are shifting your weight back as well as down. When your back leg touches, you're actually putting some of your weight on it, which alleviates some of the weight on the front leg. And then you have your forward lunge. In this case, you're stepping off with the knee that's going to bend, meaning there's no weight on it at all for a few seconds, and then it takes the brunt of not just your body weight, but the momentum generated before pushing back off. The rest of these exercises are maybe a little unconventional, either because I came up with them or I saw someone doing something and I modified it to work for me. The first exercise I call the lazy kick. It's like you're trying to kick a ball and you keep missing, but you don't really care. And you're just going to keep trying even though it doesn't really matter. As you can see, this is requiring a lot of balance. My arms are helping, but what's really working it is the supporting leg. This, just like I mentioned about kicking earlier, this is doing a lot of the work to keep me stable. The leg that's moving isn't really doing a lot. I mean, if anything, it's getting more of a hip stretch, but the more I make that kick happen, the more pressure and tension is on that rear leg, which is the point. So you can make this drill as easy or as hard as you want. Next, we have the squat bounce. I'm going to be in a squatting position where my heels are up, knees are bent, and I'm almost going to consider potentially jumping, but I never quite do. So it's this type of a feel. You can also think of it as I'm bringing my heels and my glutes together like that. Trying to keep my back upright. Balance is definitely an issue. If I lean too far forward, I'm going to fall. Too far back, I'm going to fall. So my knees are doing a lot right now. And my ankles, and my feet, and my toes. The next exercise I call the Seiza squat. Seiza is often with the toes folded in the back, the knees bent, sitting upright. A modified version, which is what we're going to use, has you up on the ball of the feet, both feet, so you're sitting on your heels. From here, you're going to shift the weight back and in and up into a squat, a modified squat. So your legs aren't out like we did with the squats earlier. Your feet are still where they are, just back, and it looks like this. Part of this drill is to maintain balance so that you're not falling forward and hitting your knees hard. If you want to be careful, which you're absolutely more than welcome to do, have a mat or a soft surface to land on. But once you figure out how this works, it doesn't matter if you have a hard or soft surface. The last two exercises are definitely up there on the difficulty scale. I don't necessarily think everyone should try them. If you've got any injuries, if you've got any sort of flexibility issues, probably not. But I'm putting them out there to hopefully inspire people to show what's possible. The first of these two exercises I'm calling the squat jumps, and you'll see why. We'll talk about it after I do it. As you can see, you're jumping as high as you can. You're tucking your knees in as much as you can. When you land, you go right into a squat. And from the squat, you go right back up into the jumps. Not only does this work everything from the waist down, your knees, your ankles, your thighs, everything. This is also an incredibly good cardio exercise. It's hard to do a lot of these at once. And the second exercise, I don't have a name for it, so I'm going to call it a party trick of an exercise that I'm still able to do, but I always regret doing it after the fact. Drill. Now, the thing about that drill or exercise, whatever you want to call it, is that's only part one. Part two is to then come up on that same leg. And a variation of part 2 is to kick switch out. So the other foot is now on the ground and you come up on that leg. It's been a long time since I've done the full up and down, and it's been a longer time since I've done the kick switch. I think with some practice I could get all the way back up again, but it's not going to happen for this week's video. And due to some loss of flexibility in my other ankle, I'm no longer able to do the kick switch without falling over, and that's okay. It was fun when it lasted. But if you're able to lower yourself down and hold yourself there, you're working balance, you're working a lower body, just like we've been doing for most of this video. That's a lot in one exercise right there. I'm sorry to say that this video will not make you a great Taiko player, but it will allow you the time to become a great Taiko player. What we do as Taiko players generates a lot of stress on the body, a lot of wear and tear, a lot of friction. And when you're young, or even when you're new to Taiko, you don't notice it as much. But as the years go on, you start to realize, maybe I didn't treat my body so well. Maybe I can't do the things I used to do. So taking care of your body sometimes is the most important thing a Taiko player can do. Anyways, I hope you liked this video. If you did, let me know with a thumbs up. I really appreciate those. If you have interest in other parts of the body that you would like to know how to maintain and take care of, please let me know as well. If you haven't hit subscribe, the button is just down there. Go ahead and give that a click. And until next time, keep on practicing and be well.